They refused to drink water for 2 full days before competition. Some collapsed backstage. A few never woke up. This wasn't stupidity. This was strategy, passed down from champion to champion in the golden era of bodybuilding. And what you're about to hear represents the most extreme training methods ever used by professional athletes. Methods so dangerous that modern gyms would call the police if you tried them today. 14 secrets, ranked from absolutely unhinged to merely reckless. One of them nearly destroyed the sport entirely. Let's start with the darkest one first. Secret number 1, pre-contest starvation plus 0 water cuts. They called it drying out. You cut water almost completely for 24 to 48 hours before stepping on stage. Slash sodium to near 0. Keep training, keep posing, keep sweating in that depleted state. Some combined it with laxatives, saunas, or diuretics that hadn't been tested on anyone, but desperate men with something to prove. The goal wasn't health. It wasn't even performance. It was razor-sharp separation between muscle bellies, veins you could trace like rivers on a map, and a hardness that looked almost inhuman under stage lights. The glass of water sat untouched on the hotel nightstand. Salt packets from room service pushed to the side of the tray. Lips cracking. Eyes starting to look distant, a little glazed. But they wouldn't touch it. Not until after the judges made their decision. Modern research links these practices directly to hospitalizations, cardiac events, kidney failure, and several documented deaths in competitive bodybuilding. Today, severe dehydration protocols are banned outright in natural federations and considered medical recklessness by every credible coach and sports physician. The lawsuits alone would bankrupt any organization that encouraged this. But back then, in those lonely hotel rooms a night before competition, staring at reflections that looked more like anatomical diagrams in human beings, they'd rather risk the emergency room than a soft-looking midsection. They'd rather gamble with their lives than lose to someone who looked just a little bit harder. 1 secret down. 13 more to go. And the next one involved people actually fainting under barbells. Secret number 2, Tom Platz-style torture sets. The gym in Southern California was a dungeon. Concrete floors, rusted equipment, no air conditioning, no fancy lighting, no mirrors except one cracked panel by the squat rack. The heat didn't come from the weather. It came from what was happening in the corner. The sound of plates clanging, and a man who decided that 20 reps wasn't enough. Tom Platz would load a barbell and go for 50 reps, 60, 70, sometimes pushing toward 100 reps in a single, unbroken set. His legs would shake so violently the bar would rattle. His vision would blur, then tunnel, then nearly go black. Spotters stood ready, but not to help with the weight. They were there to catch him when he collapsed, which happened more than once. There was a trash can in the corner. It wasn't decoration. People who trained with Platz couldn't always handle what they witnessed. Some threw up just from watching. Sets that lasted 3, 4, 5 minutes, pushing through normal muscle failure into something much darker territory where consciousness itself became optional. Leg days stretched for hours. Squats, then hack squats, then leg presses and extensions, then lunges. All high volume, all brutal. Walking afterward became a theoretical concept rather than a practical reality. Today, any commercial gym would shut this down before the first set finished. Liability concerns if a member passes out under a loaded barbell. Massive risk of rhabdomyolysis, a condition where muscle tissue breaks down so severely it can cause kidney failure, catastrophic joint damage, spinal injury from form breakdown during extreme fatigue. Training to the point of blackout is now considered irresponsible coaching at best, criminal negligence at worst. But Platz built the most legendary legs in bodybuilding history through ritualized madness that somehow impossibly worked. Which brings us to something even stranger, what these men were actually eating. Secret number 3, raw liver, raw eggs, and glandular extracts. Open the refrigerator in a 1960s bodybuilder's kitchen, and you find things that would make a modern nutritionist immediately call the health department. Raw beef liver, already cubed and sitting in a bowl, ready for the blender. 2 or 3 dozen raw eggs. Little amber bottles with labels that read desiccated liver, orchic extract, adrenal complex, Raw thyroid. Before the supplement industry existed as we know it, golden era lifters became their own experimental test subjects with organs and glands pulled from animals. They'd eat raw liver for iron and what they call vitality, some kind of life force they believe existed in fresh organ meat. They'd crack raw eggs into a glass and drink them down Rocky style, sometimes a dozen or more per day. Desiccated liver tablets would be consumed by the handful between sets at the gym, chalky and bitter. And the glandular extracts, raw adrenal tissue, orchic tissue, thyroid tissue, all compressed into pills, were promoted by coaches like Vince Gironda as natural hormonal support. Though everyone quietly understood what they actually were, the kitchen blender would grind it all together. Milk, raw eggs, chunks of raw liver, maybe some cream. The mixture looked like something from a horror film. They'd drink it down without flinching, wipe their mouths, and head to the gym. Today, this practice carries serious salmonella risk, parasite concerns from undercooked organ meat, and massive regulatory red flags everywhere you look. Raw glandular extracts are heavily controlled in most countries or outright banned as unlicensed hormone products. Most gyms and nutritionists would call this unsafe, unsanitary, and possibly illegal depending on exactly what's in those amber bottles. But back then, if it came from an animal and might make you stronger, it went into your body. No questions asked. No FDA approval needed. The experiments got even more extreme when it came to the sheer amount of time spent training. Secret number 4, 5-hour gym marathons, twice per day. The same bodybuilder would be there when the gym opened at 5 in the morning, still there at 9, still there at noon when the lunch crowd filtered in, and somehow, impossibly, still there when the sun set and the overhead fluorescent lights became the only illumination. Some golden era competitors practically lived inside the gym during the final weeks of contest prep. The morning session would run 3 to 4 hours. Weights, cables, machines, dumbbells, then posing practice in front of whatever mirror had the best lighting. Brief break, maybe some food, maybe not. Then the evening session, another 2 to 3 hours of weights, hundreds of reps of abs, more posing, more fine-tuning. Total training time per day could hit 6, 7, sometimes 8 hours. All of this happening on extremely low calories, minimal sleep, and stress hormones that never got a chance to come back down to normal levels. Their hands would be torn and bleeding from gripping bars and dumbbells for so many hours. Eyes bloodshot from the strain and lack of rest. Skin taking on that strange, gray quality that comes from chronic overtraining. Training partners would quietly suggest maybe it was time to go home, get some rest, recover. The suggestion would be ignored or met with something close to anger. Today, many commercial gyms actually limit training hours for liability reasons. They close earlier partly to avoid people doing exactly this. Overtraining to that degree causes serious hormonal collapse. Testosterone plummets, cortisol skyrockets. The immune system fails. Mental health deteriorates rapidly. Reputable coaches now push shorter, smarter, more focused sessions based on actual recovery science and circadian biology. But back then, in those fluorescent-lit temples of iron, more is better wasn't just a slogan or motivational phrase. It was a literal dare that you either accepted or walked away from forever. And if you thought training for 8 straight hours was insane, wait until you hear about where some of them chose to do it. Secret number 5, training in saunas and boiler rooms. The thermometer mounted on the basement wall read 98 degrees Fahrenheit. That was before anyone started training. Some golden era bodybuilders genuinely believed that if you weren't absolutely drenched in sweat, dripping from every pore, you weren't really burning fat or bringing out definition. So they engineered their own suffering. They'd train in unventilated basements with radiators deliberately turned up and blasting. They perform entire workouts inside actual saunas or specially heated rooms, running high-rep circuits until the walls themselves dripped with condensation. They'd wear heavy cotton sweatshirts and sweatpants in the middle of summer, rubber suits designed to trap every bit of moisture, plastic wraps around their midsections to squeeze every possible drop of water from their bodies through their skin. The iron plates would be hot to the touch. You'd burn your hands if you grabbed them without chalk. The air became so thick, and humid, you could barely pull it into your lungs. Steam would curl around bodies doing squats and dips and presses in conditions that felt less like training and more like deliberate punishment. Modern sports science is absolutely, unequivocally clear on this point. Sweating more does not equal more fat loss. It doesn't speed up your metabolism. It doesn't melt anything. It equals lost fluids and lost electrolytes, period. And it dramatically increases the risk of heat stroke, severe dehydration, dangerous electrolyte imbalances, and cardiac events that can be fatal. Many gyms today have strict written policies on temperature control, ventilation standards, and appropriate training clothing. Plastic sweatsuits are explicitly banned in most facilities. Training in extreme heat is prohibited. The insurance simply won't cover it. But back then, in those underground boiler rooms, it felt like something from an industrial nightmare. The suffering was actually the entire point. If it didn't hurt, it wasn't working. The next secret involves one specific legendary bodybuilder and a lifting style that destroyed nearly as many shoulders as it built. Secret number 6. Franco Columbu's heavy cheat lifts. Franco Columbu was freakishly, almost supernaturally strong for his size. He was also just a little bit reckless in the most entertaining way possible. Old grainy footage from the 1970s shows him doing barbell rows with so much body momentum, so much explosive English, that his feet would nearly leave the floor with each rep. Dumbbell lateral raises with weights that looked far too heavy for any human shoulder joint, heaved upward with full body swing and torque. Deadlift performed with a deliberately rounded back and absolutely insane loads that would make modern coaches cover their eyes. Cheat curls where his entire torso would jerk and thrust to move the barbell from his thighs all the way up to his chest. Arnold Schwarzenegger would stand there loading more plates onto bar, laughing, knowing exactly what was about to happen. Franco would grin, grip the bar, and then rip a set that looked more like controlled chaos, like a barely contained explosion, than anything resembling a textbook exercise with proper form. The cramped, dim quarters of Gold's Gym Venice in the mid-70s didn't have much room for safety margins anyway. Everything was packed tight, rusty, and a little dangerous. Today, strict form is absolutely king in commercial gym culture, enforced partly because of legitimate liability concerns and partly because insurance companies demand it. Extreme cheat repetitions performed with near maximal weights are now considered injury factories by modern coaching standards. Rotator cuff tears waiting to happen, bicep tendon ruptures, lower back disasters. Some coaches call this style orthopedic suicide. Insurance underwriters certainly agree with that assessment. But Franco Columbu built a legendary physique, won Mr. Olympia, and became one of the most iconic bodybuilders in history, using a training style that would get him immediately kicked out of most gyms today and possibly even reported to management. This was a Wild West era of iron. If the weight moved from point A to point B, it counted as a rep. And speaking of moving weight for absolutely absurd durations, the midpoint secret might be the single strangest revelation in this entire list. Secret number 7, all-day pump sessions before shows. Show day morning, 6 o'clock, still dark outside. A competitor arrives at the venue with a gym bag full of dumbbells, resistance bands, and a couple of trusted friends who agreed to help. He finds a quiet corner backstage or in a hotel conference room, and he starts pumping up. Bicep curls, shoulder raises, chest flies, tricep extensions, lat pull-downs with bands. Lightweight, high reps, constant tension, never quite locking out. 9 in the morning, he's still going, sets blending into each other. Noon rolls around, still pumping. Arms, shoulders, chest, back, over and over in rotation. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, when prejudging is finally about to start, he's been performing endless light sets for nearly 10 straight hours. Hundreds upon hundreds of total sets, maybe 1,000 reps or more. Barely any rest between exercise clusters. Hardly eating anything, terrified that food will make him look soft or smooth. Barely drinking water. Paralyzed by the fear of spilling over and losing the hard, dry definition he's worked months to achieve. The air backstage becomes heavy with the smell of tanning oil, pro-tan, ammonia from smelling salts, and nervous energy. His veins are throbbing so intensely they look like they might burst through the surface of his skin. This was a truly bizarre reality of old-school competition day. Some bodybuilders would pump continuously for 6 to 10 hours straight, nearly burning themselves out completely right before being judged on stage. Today, backstage pump-up areas are carefully regulated for space, time limits, and available equipment. Marathon pump sessions performed in a severely dehydrated state can cause dangerous muscle cramping, sudden fainting spells, or even acute muscle tears from overuse. Many federations and experienced coaches now actively discourage this practice for health and safety reasons. But back then, stopping meant someone else in your class might look fuller, more vascular, more impressive than you when the lights hit. So they simply didn't stop. Not for food, not for water, not for rest. Now, let's talk about the absolutely staggering amounts of food some of them were consuming during all of this training. Secret number 8. Serge Nubret's 8 to 12 pounds of meat per day. Serge Nubret's diet is legendary in bodybuilding history for one simple, overwhelming reason: the sheer volume of meat involved. Reports and interviews describe him eating somewhere between 8 and 12 pounds of meat every single day, not spread across 5 or 6 meals like a modern bodybuilder might. Sometimes just 1 or 2 absolutely massive meals, 4 to 6 pounds of meat in a single sitting. Sometimes even more. Horse meat during his earlier years in France, when it was more common and affordable. Beef later on. Always meat, dominating the plate. Meat plus some rice or beans or pasta on the side, but the protein always towering over everything else. The clear focus of every meal. Very few supplements. No protein powders. No fancy imported nutrients. He genuinely believed meat was enough, that everything he needed existed in animal flesh. Picture a quiet Paris apartment at noon. Sunlight coming through old windows. One enormous plate sitting on a small table. A portion that looked like it was meant for a family dinner. An entire roast meant for one man sitting alone. Serge would calmly, methodically work through a portion that seemed physically impossible for a human stomach to hold, then train intensely for hours, then do it all over again. Today, this dietary approach would raise immediate red flags everywhere. Serious heart health concerns, digestive system stress, kidney load from excessive protein, questions about ethical sourcing and environmental impact. Modern nutritional guidelines issued by every major health organization strongly caution against such extreme red meat intake sustained over years or decades. Many sports organizations and supplement companies would actively hesitate to publicly associate with such an extreme regimen for fear of backlash. But Serge Nubret maintained one of the most aesthetic, symmetrical, classically beautiful physiques in the entire history of bodybuilding, and he credited the meat. Which brings us to another dietary extremist who had his own completely unhinged approach that makes Nubret look almost reasonable. Secret number 9. Vince Gironda's steak and eggs diet for months. Vince Gironda, known as the Iron Guru, ran his North Hollywood gym like it was a private laboratory, and he was the lead researcher. His most famous and controversial experiment was something called the steak and eggs diet, essentially a zero-carbohydrate approach maintained for weeks or even months at a time without deviation. Steak for protein, eggs for protein and fat, butter, heavy cream, and other animal fats for additional calories. That was it. No bread, no rice, no fruit, no vegetables most of the time. Sometimes 2 or 3 steak and eggs meals every single day. Breakfast, steak and eggs. Lunch, steak and eggs. Dinner, steak and eggs. Day after day after day, week after week. Every few days, he'd prescribe a high-carbohydrate refeed meal, a huge plate of pasta or pancakes to refill muscle glycogen stores, then immediately back to steak and eggs for another stretch. He combined this with massive doses of desiccated liver tablets, raw glandular extracts, and various other supplements he manufactured and sold from behind the gym counter. You'd find him there most afternoons, chalk dust on his dark pants, a plastic container of steak beside the register, Tupperware full of hard-boiled eggs in the mini fridge, lecturing young actors and models on exactly how to get camera ready in 6 weeks or less. The diet worked incredibly well for some people. It completely wrecked others. Energy crashes, mood problems, digestive rebellion. Modern nutritional standards and medical research raise serious concerns about long-term ultra-low carbohydrate, ultra-high saturated fat diets. significantly increased risk of heart disease, potential metabolic dysfunction, nutrient deficiencies, liver stress. Many gyms today wouldn't legally allow trainers to prescribe such extreme, restrictive regimens without direct medical oversight from a licensed physician. And some of Gironda's supplement practices involving raw animal glandulars would likely trigger immediate regulatory investigations now. But back in the 1960s and 70s, his gym was the place Hollywood actors went when they absolutely needed to transform their bodies fast for a shirtless scene. The mad scientist's kitchen that somehow, against all odds, produced movie-ready bodies on deadline. Next, let's talk about something even more fundamental: how often these men actually trained. Secret number 10. Everyday full-body routines with 0 rest days. Pull out an old-school bodybuilder's training calendar from the 1950s or 60s and examine it closely. You won't find any blank squares. No designated rest days. No active recovery sessions. No strategic deload weeks where volume and intensity drop to allow adaptation. Just training every single day, sometimes twice per day, for weeks turning into months, turning into years. Full body routines that hit every major muscle group each session. Squats, presses, rows, deadlifts, curls, calves, abs, everything every day. They'd rotate exercises and vary the intensity slightly, but they never skipped a workout. Sleep and food were the only recovery tools they acknowledged or respected. You'd see the same lifter dragging himself into York Barbell Gym again at dawn, joints clearly aching, moving a little stiffly, but absolutely determined to train. The regulars would shake their heads in amazement or concern. He's back again? Did we just see him 12 hours ago? Even high-level professional athletes today, with access to the best sports science and recovery technology, understand the absolute necessity of systemic recovery, central nervous system fatigue, hormonal restoration, tissue repair, psychological rest. Many experienced coaches now warn that training hard every single day without scheduled rest is a fast track to injury, complete burnout, and catastrophic hormonal collapse that can take years to fix. Commercial gyms and modern wellness culture emphasize balance, rest days, recovery protocols, and mental health just as much as training intensity and volume. But back then, in those old-school gyms with their basic equipment and no-nonsense attitudes, rest was for people who didn't want success badly enough. The no-days-off mentality existed decades before it became a hashtag on social media or a slogan on tank tops. And some of the most hardcore lifters took it even further by deliberately making the actual training itself harder to even hold on to. Secret number 11. Thick bar-only training for weeks. The garage gym somewhere in the Midwest during winter. Cold, dimly lit by a single bulb hanging from the ceiling. No heaters because heating costs money. Along the back wall sat a collection of homemade thick-handled dumbbells and barbells. Equipment with grip diameters much, much larger than standard 1-inch or Olympic bars. Some old-school bodybuilders and strongmen, influenced by the older strongman tradition, would deliberately run entire training phases, lasting weeks, using only these thick bars for every exercise. Curls, rows, overhead presses, bench presses, deadlifts, everything performed with bars that required crushing, sustained grip strength just to hold the weight in your hands. Your forearms and biceps would start burning not from the load moving through space, not from the target muscle working, but purely from the desperate effort of maintaining your grip and not dropping the bar. Lifters would fail sets not because their chest or back or shoulders gave out from fatigue, but because their hands simply couldn't hold on for one more second. The bar would slip from their fingers and crash to the floor. They'd stare at their hands in frustration, knowing the target muscle could have done more. Thick bar training is still used strategically today by some strength coaches and advanced lifters, but sparingly, carefully, maybe once or twice per week for specific grip work. A full thick bar only training program lasting multiple weeks would be considered by modern sports medicine to be a recipe for severe tendinitis, chronic elbow inflammation, terrible wrist issues, and potential nerve impingement problems, especially for unprepared trainees whose connective tissue hasn't adapted. Commercial gyms worry about equipment compatibility, member safety, and the serious liability of people injuring their tendons and ligaments from overuse. But back then, if something made your training harder, more painful, more challenging, then it automatically made you tougher and more worthy. a grip strength gauntlet hidden inside an already brutally hardcore subculture. From grip torture, we move to something more repetitive and somehow equally obsessive. Secret number 12, 1,000 rep obsessions daily. The small, cramped apartment, television flickering in the corner, volume turned low, barely providing background noise. A bodybuilder lying on the carpet, hands behind his head, counting crunches under his breath with grim determination. 300, 400, 500, 600, 700. A plastic bucket sitting nearby, placed there deliberately in case the nausea building in his gut gets too overwhelming to ignore. This was the reality of old-school abdominal training. Not nuance, not exercise science, not understanding of core stability, just pure grinding volume. 500 to 1,000 sit-ups or crunches in a single session, performed every single day without exception. Sometimes multiple sessions per day if contest prep was approaching. Executed on concrete basement floors, hard wooden benches, or steep slant boards with absolutely no consideration given to the lower back, hip flexors, or any concept of recovery between sessions. The abdominals had to be earned through suffering, through sheer repetition that bordered on obsessive-compulsive ritual rather than logical training. If your abs didn't hurt the next morning, if you could laugh without wincing, then you clearly hadn't worked hard enough. Modern trainers and sports physical therapists now recognize that daily 1,000-rep obsessions are incredibly inefficient, genuinely risky for long-term spinal health and disintegrity, and completely unnecessary when proper diet and moderate, intelligent core work produce better results in less time with less risk. Many experienced coaches actively recommend low to moderate volume with proper form, progressive resistance, and adequate recovery, not endless flailing on the floor until something tears. But back then, in those late-night solo training sessions, if your abs didn't burn like someone had poured acid on them, you hadn't put in the work. Which brings us to yet another form of deliberate, almost ritualistic suffering, training in conditions most people would consider punishment. Secret number 13, ice-cold outdoor workouts in winter. Not everyone in the golden era had access to heated, climate-controlled gyms with comfortable environments. Stories passed down from York Barbell headquarters in Pennsylvania, from early British garage gyms, from European barn gyms and countryside, tell of bodybuilders and strength athletes training in genuinely freezing conditions that would violate every modern workplace safety standard. Breath visibly misting in the air during squats and overhead presses. Cold so intense you could see your exhalations forming clouds. Barbells so cold they would literally stick to your skin if you grabbed them without first applying thick chalk or wearing gloves. Some lifters would deliberately leave windows and doors open even when they didn't have to, genuinely believing that training in the cold made them harder, tougher, more disciplined, and resilient than men who needed comfort and warmth. Steam would rise from their shoulders and backs between sets as body heat met frigid air. Knuckles would turn red, then white, then nearly purple, fingers going numb, the concrete floor cold enough to burn to the soles of their shoes, snow visible through cracks in the brick walls or gaps in the barn siding. Today, cold gyms represent serious, potentially lawsuit-ending liability issues for facility owners. Many countries, especially in Europe, have strict health and safety regulations that mandate minimum indoor temperatures for workplaces and training facilities. Training with cold, unstiff muscles are considered by every sports medicine authority to be a clear and obvious injury risk. Dramatically reduce blood flow to working tissues, stiff and inflexible connective tissue, impaired neural drive and motor control. But back then, during an era when toughness was currency and comfort was suspicious, half born from necessity and half from hard man, ritual, and identity, they lifted in conditions that wouldn't pass modern risk management inspection for 5 minutes. And finally, we arrive at the last secret, perhaps less medically dangerous than deliberate dehydration, but psychologically intense and all-consuming in its own quiet, obsessive way. Secret number 14, marathon posing sessions for hours. The mirrored room above the gym. Small, cramped, stuffy. Just a cheap tape deck sitting in the corner playing the same posing music on repeat and a single oscillating fan that barely moved the hot air around. A bodybuilder standing alone, hitting his front double biceps again and again and again, sweat pooling at his feet on the wooden floor. For golden era champions, posing wasn't just stage presentation or showmanship. It was considered a legitimate workout in itself, an art form that required the same dedication as lifting. They would hold mandatory poses for 1 to 2 full minutes each, isometrically contracting every muscle fiber. They'd run through their entire competition routines repeatedly for an hour or more without stopping. Practice day after day after day in small, hot rooms with bright lights mimicking stage conditions. They treated posing like specialized isometric endurance training, specifically designed to increase muscle hardness, density, and control. John Grymek in the 1940s, Reg Park in the 1950s, later Arnold Schwarzenegger and Frank Zane in the 1970s. These champions would reportedly spend hours refining not just their transitions and musical timing, but their facial expressions, their breathing patterns, their ability to maintain flex under fatigue. Modern coaches and contest prep specialists still heavily emphasize posing practice as absolutely essential to competition success, but they carefully avoid recommending true marathon sessions because of significant joint strain, severe cramping risk in depleted athletes, and the psychological burnout that comes from such repetitive, exhausting practice. Clients today are far more likely to quit their prep or change coaches if told to pose nonstop for 2 hours daily. Some federations now actually regulate backstage posing practice space and time limits for fairness and prevent competitive advantages through excessive pumping. But back then, this was a quiet obsession that separated merely good physiques from truly legendary, iconic ones. All-consuming, physically exhausting, and strangely meditative in its repetitive intensity. 14 secrets. 14 methods that would get you banned from gyms, sued by insurance companies, or hospitalized in today's world. The golden era of bodybuilding wasn't just about building impressive muscle. It was about testing human limits that probably should never have been tested in the first place. These men didn't have the sports science we have now. They didn't have peer-reviewed studies or medical oversight or liability lawyers. What they had was raw ambition, extraordinary pain tolerance, and a willingness to gamble with their own bodies for a chance at immortality on stage. Some won that gamble and became legends. Others paid physical and psychological prices, were still calculating decades later. The iron still remembers their names, whispered in gyms when the conversation turns to what real dedication used to mean. And next time, we'll tell you about the one old-school training method that actually made a comeback in modern bodybuilding, and why current sports science finally admitted the legends were right all along.